So let's review some of the highlights to bring us up to speed so we can finish up this year and go into a completely different avenue in 2013. First of all, we liken the ground for planting the Book of Mormon to the early American setting that helped create the character of Joseph Smith himself. This ground consisted of early American political opinions that found their way into Joseph's narrative. Additionally, we talked about popular anti-Catholic attitudes that also worked their way into the book, a very unique Protestant culture, and an intense interest at that time in Native American origins. We cannot discount the amount of influence these factors had on the mind of the boy Joseph Smith, because as we have seen, they not only helped forge his personal worldview and how he saw things through his specific lens, but they actually also found their way into the Book of Mormon narrative. These elements would ultimately come to serve as the foundation or the ground for Joseph's personal worldview and much of the content contained in the book. The next element we examined was the seed for the Book of Mormon, which we liken to the influence of Joseph Smith's parents upon his person. What kind of influence did his parents and family have upon him? We talked about the early family stance against organized religion, their belief in Christ's church needing to be restored, the fact that Joseph's mother was zealously religious while his father was zealously rebellious against religion. We talked about the role poverty played in the Smith family, the role that early physical, emotional, and psychological pain and suffering had upon his person, the role of his father's drinking in the family, and the sudden death of his older brother Alvin. Perhaps more than any other factor, we discussed how Joseph Smith's own father was a visionary man who had dreams, and these very dreams actually made their way into the text of the Book of Mormon as well. The next contributing element we examined was the fertilizer Smith used to prepare the soil. We liken this fertilizer to Joseph Smith's magic practices in the occult, which was introduced and encouraged by his own father. In our examination and in the presentation of the facts we discovered, we were able to make some very strong, excuse me, there's all kinds of things going wrong in here. Okay, we were talking about the early magic practices. In our examination, we were able to make some strong and wholly reasonable connections to the fact that the prophet, seer, and revelator to be not only learned his craft from years of pretending to see buried treasure by sticking his face in a dark hat, but that he would employ these very same folk magic practices in his supposed translation of this book, where in his folk magic activities he was instructed by spirits as to the whereabouts of buried treasure, gold. Smith claims to have been led by another spirit, the angel Moroni, to the location of other buried gold, this time on gold plates, which contained a book. Not only did folk magic practices play a role in the coming forth of the Book of Mormon, they also made their way into the pages of the Book of Mormon, which we discussed. The fact that Smith died carrying magic amulets and magic parchments on his person when his body lay there dead shows how influential the occult and magic practices were upon this religion's founder. Once the ground was fertilized and the seed for the onion was in hand, it was now time to plant, and we liken this to the interactions with the angel Moroni. Included in this, we took a few weeks to look at Joseph Smith's first vision claims, and were able to prove that the true and historical first vision of Mormonism occurred in 1823 when the angel Moroni came to Joseph Smith's bedroom, not in 1820 when God the Father and Jesus Christ supposedly visited him. That was made up retroactively and what came about 13 years after the fact in terms of written proof. Looking at the reports and records of Moroni, we were able to see, according to Smith, that He was very active in visiting and assisting Smith in his practices, so much more than the missionaries and Sunday school teachers in the Mormon church reveal today. With the seed planted in fertilized soil, we introduce the watering of the onion, likening this act to the translation process of the book as detailed by history. Since watering helps seeds grow, we can look at the translation process as an evolving thing that helped the Book of Mormon spread out in its narrative. The translation process was really amazing in many different ways. We learned that timelines for translating that Mormonism teaches its people were very suspect, that the character of Martin Harris was twisted a bit, that Joseph Smith, after having been told by God to join no church in 1820, actually joined the Methodist Church in 1828, contrary to everything the church is supposedly built upon. We also showed how the purpose and point of the onion morphed over time as Smith faced various trials and challenges in his own personal life. The theme of the Book of Mormon also morphed. Finally, we discussed the story of Harris going to Professor Anton and what a farce the story LDS missionaries tell is today. When the first 116 pages of the onion were stolen by Martin Harris' pesky wife, we liken this to Smith needing to supply strong pesticide to the whole thing, as failing to respond would have finished the Book of Mormon. In these programs, we pointed out that it was during the crisis of the lost 116 pages that Joseph Smith shape-shifted from being a kind of a magic, folklorish, gold treasure guy to being a prophet, seer, and revelator, and the narrative of the Book of Mormon follows that transition, where the lost 116 pages were mostly historical about the origins of the Native Americans. Suddenly it shifted into becoming a religious book. And finally, before unearthing the onion, we talked about some final cultivation that took place, which amounted to Joseph Smith getting together with a distant relative by the name of Oliver Cowdery. And once Oliver and Joseph cultivated the contents of the book, it was ready to go. We took that early version, the first version, and at first glance, we noticed its verbosity. We noticed the changes that have taken place in it. We noticed anachronisms. We noticed supposed chiasmus, which has been disproven. We noticed city names and the origins of them from other local geography in Joseph Smith's day. We noticed apocryphal book references. We noticed proper noun names formulated by this goofy suffix or prefix name that Joseph Smith would use, like anti or Ammoniha or Shaniha or Shanehaha. I mean, it was just a suffix game to create more names to use. And we also looked at the Liahona as a compass, a magical ball that would steer them to prosperity. Then we looked at the witnesses of the plates themselves and some of the revelations God conveniently gave Joseph Smith to force Martin Harris to mortgage his farm for the production and publication of the Book of Mormon. And then we actually cracked the book open and we started to peel back the layers, starting with the title page. We showed you difficulties with that. And we ended the harvest section with a study of Sidney Rigdon, somebody who could have played a part in the construction of the book from the onset.